Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the quiet hours of dawn, the once bustling laboratory resembled a stage set, awaiting the grand entrance of its protagonists. David, the eccentric scientist, meticulously tweaked his groundbreaking invention, his fingers dancing across the intricate contraption with practiced ease. His wild auburn locks, a testament to his creative genius, framed a face illuminated by the machine's soft glow. The tension in the air was palpable as the culmination of countless moons of toil hung in the balance. With a steady hand belying his racing pulse, David straightened his lab coat, a ritualistic gesture in preparation for the extraordinary. He murmured affirmations to himself, a silent incantation of confidence, his eyes never leaving the intricate web of wires and dials.
"Destiny awaits,"
he whispered, his breath catching in his throat, for he knew this experiment defied convention. Across the laboratory, Ashley, his intrepid partner in science, mirrored his nervous energy.
"We've come too far to turn back now, Ashley. Think of the possibilities if this works. We could revolutionize medicine, psychology, even our understanding of consciousness itself."
Ashley nodded reluctantly, taking her place on one of the two raised platforms connected to the machine. David stepped onto the other, his fingers hovering over the activation switch.
"Ready?"
he asked, locking eyes with Ashley. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready as I'll ever be." David flipped the switch, and the lab was filled with a blinding flash of light and a deafening hum. The air crackled with energy, and both David and Ashley felt a strange tingling sensation throughout their bodies. Then, everything went black. When David regained consciousness, something felt off. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, and froze as he caught sight of his hands. They were smaller, more delicate, with perfectly manicured nails.
"No,"
he whispered, his voice coming out higher and softer than he was used to.
"This can't be happening."
He stumbled off the platform, his center of gravity all wrong, and made his way to a nearby mirror. The face that stared back at him was Ashley's, framed by flowing auburn hair.
"Ashley!"
he called out, panic rising in his chest.
"Ashley, are you okay?"
A groan came from the other platform, and David watched in horror as his own body sat up, rubbing its head. "David?" Ashley's voice came from his body, sounding confused and disoriented. "What happened? Why do I sound like you?" David swallowed hard, his new throat constricting with fear.
"The machine. It worked, but not the way we intended. We've swapped bodies, Ashley."
Ashley's eyes widened as she looked down at her new form, then back at David in her body. "This is impossible!" she breathed. "We have to switch back immediately!" David nodded vigorously, already moving towards the control panel. "Agreed. Let's reverse the process and—" His words were cut off by a sudden spark from the machine, followed by a plume of smoke. The control panel went dark, and the low hum that had filled the lab fell silent. "No! No! No!" David cried, frantically trying to restart the machine. But it was no use. The delicate circuits had been fried by the unexpected power surge. "What does this mean?" Ashley asked, her voice trembling. David turned to face her, his new face pale with shock.
"It means we're stuck like this, at least until I can figure out how to fix the machine."
The reality of their situation hit them both like a ton of bricks. David was now Danielle, trapped in Ashley's body, while Ashley was stuck as David. The consequences of their experiment stretched out before them, a vast unknown that neither had truly prepared for. Days turned into weeks as Danielle struggled to adapt to her new life. Simple tasks that she had taken for granted as David now presented unexpected challenges. She fumbled with bra clasps, wobbled on heels, and spent far too long trying to figure out how to style her long auburn hair. One morning, as she stood in front of the mirror, wrestling with a particularly stubborn strand of hair, she let out a frustrated groan. "This is impossible! How do women deal with this every day?" A knock on the bathroom door startled her. "Danielle?" It was Ashley, still inhabiting David's body. "Are you okay in there?" Danielle sighed, opening the door to reveal her disheveled appearance. Ashley's eyes widened at the sight of her former body in such disarray. "I'm fine," Danielle muttered, tugging at her tangled hair. "Just having some trouble with this mane of yours." Ashley's expression softened. "Here, let me help." She stepped into the bathroom, gently taking the brush from Danielle's hands. With practiced movements, she began to work through the tangles. "I never realized how much work goes into being a woman," Danielle admitted, watching Ashley's reflection in the mirror. "It's overwhelming." Ashley nodded, a wry smile on her face. "Try being a man. I keep forgetting my own strength in this body. Yesterday, I accidentally crushed a doorknob." They both chuckled, finding a moment of levity in their bizarre situation. As Ashley finished brushing Danielle's hair, she paused, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "We'll figure this out, you know," she said softly. "You'll fix the machine, and we'll get back to normal." Danielle nodded, wanting to believe it. But as the days wore on, that hope began to fade. The damage to the machine was more extensive than she had initially thought, and sourcing the specialized parts needed for repairs was proving to be a nightmare. Meanwhile, life went on. Danielle had to figure out how to navigate the world as a woman, from dealing with unwanted attention to managing her new wardrobe. She found herself spending hours in front of the mirror, trying to perfect her makeup technique, and wondering how she had ever taken Ashley's effortless beauty for granted. One day, as she was struggling to zip up a green dress for a work event, Ashley walked in. "Need some help?" she asked, her voice still jarring coming from David's body. Danielle nodded gratefully, turning to allow Ashley access to the zipper. As Ashley's fingers brushed against her back, Danielle felt an unexpected shiver run through her body. "There," Ashley said, stepping back. "All set." Danielle turned to face her, smoothing down the front of the dress. "How do I look?" Ashley's eyes traveled over her former body, a mix of emotions playing across her face. "You look beautiful," she said softly. "But it's strange seeing you in there, seeing how you move in my body, how you carry yourself. It's like watching a stranger wear my skin." Danielle felt a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry, Ashley. I know this isn't easy for you either." Ashley shook her head. "It's not your fault. We both agreed to this experiment. We just never expected it to turn out like this." As they stood there, facing each other in bodies that weren't their own, Danielle felt a sudden urge to reach out, to comfort Ashley, but she hesitated, unsure of how such a gesture would be received in their current forms. The moment passed, and Ashley cleared her throat. "Well, you'd better get going. Don't want to be late for the event." Danielle nodded, grabbing her purse and heading for the door. As she left, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, a new tension that hadn't existed before. The work event proved to be a challenge in itself. Danielle found herself navigating a minefield of social expectations she had never had to consider as David. Men who had once treated her as an equal now spoke to her with a patronizing tone, explaining concepts she had pioneered as if she were a child. She gritted her teeth, reminding herself to smile and nod. It wouldn't do to cause a scene, not when she was still trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy in her professional life. As she sipped on a glass of white wine, trying to look engaged in a conversation about office politics, she caught sight of her reflection in a nearby window. The auburn-haired woman staring back at her still felt like a stranger, despite the weeks that had passed. "Dr. Thompson?" a voice called out, and it took Danielle a moment to realize they were addressing her. She turned to see one of her colleagues, Dr. Jenkins, approaching with a smile.
"I must say, you look lovely tonight,"
he said, his eyes lingering a bit too long on her figure.
"That green really brings out your eyes."
Danielle forced a smile, feeling a mix of discomfort and anger at the unwanted attention. "Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. I trust you've had a chance to review the latest data from our quantum entanglement experiments?" Dr. Jenkins blinked, clearly thrown off by her abrupt change of subject. Yes, of course. Fascinating stuff." As Danielle launched into a detailed discussion of their research, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction at the look of bewilderment on Dr. Jenkins's face. It was a small victory, but it felt good to assert her intelligence and expertise, regardless of her outward appearance. The night wore on, and Danielle found herself exhausted by the constant need to be on guard, to navigate the subtle and not so subtle differences in how she was treated. By the time she made it home, her feet were aching from the heels, and her head was pounding. She kicked off the shoes as soon as she entered the apartment, sighing in relief. Ashley was sitting on the couch, watching TV, and looked up as she entered. "Rough night?" she asked, taking in Danielle's disheveled appearance. Danielle nodded, collapsing onto the couch next to her. "I never realized how exhausting it could be, just existing as a woman in professional spaces. The constant comments, the subtle dismissals. It's infuriating." Ashley nodded sympathetically. "I know."
"It's something you don't really notice until you're on the receiving end of it. But you handled it well, I'm sure."
Danielle leaned her head back, closing her eyes. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, Ashley. Every day, it feels like I'm losing a little more of myself. And the machine, I'm starting to think it might be beyond repair." There was a moment of heavy silence before Ashley spoke. "What are you saying, Danielle?" Danielle opened her eyes, meeting Ashley's gaze. "I'm saying we might need to start considering the possibility that this is permanent, that we might have to learn to live in these bodies for good." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Ashley's face, still strange to see with David's features, twisted with a mix of emotions. "I can't accept that," she said finally, her voice low and intense. "There has to be a way to fix this. We can't just give up." Danielle nodded, understanding Ashley's frustration all too well. "I'm not giving up. I'll keep working on the machine, keep trying to find a solution. But we also need to be realistic. It's been weeks, and we're no closer to reversing the swap. We need to start thinking about how to move forward if this turns out to be our new reality." Ashley stood up abruptly, pacing the room. "How can you talk about this so calmly? Don't you want your body back? Don't you miss being yourself? Of course I do, Danielle exclaimed, her own frustration bubbling to the surface. Every morning I wake up hoping it was all a bad dream. Every time I look in the mirror, I'm shocked by the face staring back at me. But what choice do we have? We can't put our lives on hold indefinitely. Ashley stopped pacing, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I know you're right. It's just hard to accept. Danielle stood, moving to stand in front of Ashley. It was still disconcerting to have to look up at her own face, to see her old body inhabited by someone else. She reached out, hesitating for a moment before placing a hand on Ashley's arm. We're in this together, she said softly. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out. Okay? Ashley nodded, managing a weak smile. Okay. As they stood there, an unexpected wave of emotion washed over Danielle. Despite the bizarre circumstances, despite the frustration and fear, she felt a connection to Ashley that she had never experienced before. It was as if their shared ordeal had forged a bond between them, one that transcended their physical forms. The next few weeks saw both Danielle and Ashley making tentative steps towards adapting to their new lives. For Danielle, this meant embracing aspects of femininity she had never considered before. She found herself enjoying the ritual of applying makeup, the way it could transform her appearance and boost her confidence. One sunny afternoon, she decided to go shopping for new clothes. As she browsed through racks of dresses and blouses, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. It was still strange to be shopping in the women's section, to be considering things like necklines and hemlines. She picked out a few items to try on, including a flowing red sundress that caught her eye. In the fitting room, she slipped it on, marveling at how the soft fabric felt against her skin. When she looked in the mirror, she was struck by how natural she looked, how the dress seemed to complement her new form perfectly. For a moment, she forgot about the body swap, about the struggles of the past weeks. She was simply a woman, admiring herself in a pretty dress. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. As she left the store with her purchases, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted within her. She was starting to see her new body not as a prison, but as a part of herself. Meanwhile, Ashley was grappling with her own challenges. The strength and size of David's body still caught her off guard at times, and she struggled with the societal expectations placed on men. She found herself missing the easy camaraderie she had once shared with other women, now feeling like an outsider in those same social circles. One evening, as they sat eating dinner together, Ashley broached the subject. "Do you ever feel like you're playing a role?" she asked, pushing her food around her plate. "Like you're an actor in some bizarre play, and everyone else knows the script except you?" Danielle nodded, understanding all too well. "All the time. It's like, I know how to be a scientist, how to be a colleague, a friend. But being a woman? Sometimes I feel like I'm fumbling in the dark." Ashley let out a humorless laugh. "Try being a man. I never realized how much pressure there is to be strong, to be in control all the time. It's exhausting." Danielle reached across the table, taking Ashley's hand in hers. The size difference between their hands was still jarring, but the gesture felt natural. "We're learning," she said softly. "Every day, we're figuring out a little bit more, and we have each other to lean on." Ashley squeezed her hand, a small smile playing at her lips. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Danielle. You're the only one who really understands what this is like." As they sat there,
hands clasped across the table. Danielle felt a warmth spreading through her chest. Despite everything, despite the impossibility of their situation, she felt grateful for the bond they had formed. The next day, Danielle threw herself back into her work on the machine. She had been avoiding it lately, discouraged by the lack of progress, but Ashley's words had reignited her determination. She spent hours poring over schematics, testing circuits, and running simulations. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lab, Danielle felt a spark of hope. She had identified a potential solution, a way to recalibrate the machine's energy output that might allow for a reversal of the swap. Excited, she called out to Ashley, who had been working quietly in the corner. "Ashley, I think I've got something." Ashley hurried over, peering at the complex diagrams on Danielle's computer screen. "What is it? Did you figure out how to switch us back?" Danielle nodded, her eyes bright with excitement. "I think so. It's not a guarantee, but it's the best lead we've had in weeks. If we can just—" Her words were cut off by a sudden power surge. The lights in the lab flickered, and Danielle's computer screen went black. When the power stabilized a moment later, Danielle's heart sank as she saw that her work had been lost. "No," she whispered, frantically trying to recover the data. But it was gone, wiped clean by the surge. Weeks of work, countless hours of calculations and simulations, all vanished in an instant. Danielle felt tears welling up in her eyes. The frustration and despair she had been holding back for weeks finally breaking through. She slumped in her chair, burying her face in her hands. Ashley knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Hey, it's okay," she said softly. "We'll figure it out. We always do." Danielle looked up, meeting Ashley's concerned gaze. "What if we don't?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if this is it? What if we're stuck like this forever?" Ashley was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. "Then we'll face it together," she said finally. "Whatever happens, we have each other, and maybe that's enough." Danielle felt a rush of affection for Ashley, for her unwavering support and understanding. Without thinking, she leaned forward, pressing her lips against Ashley's in a gentle kiss. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Then, reality came crashing back in, and Danielle pulled away, her eyes wide with shock at her own actions. "I'm sorry," she stammered, her face flushing red. "I don't know why I did that. Ashley cut her off, pulling her into another kiss. This one was deeper, more passionate, filled with all the complex emotions they had been grappling with since the swap. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. They stared at each other, the air between them charged with a new tension. "What does this mean?" Danielle asked, her voice shaky. Ashley shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "I don't know, but I think it means we're not just stuck with each other. We've chosen each other." As they sat there in the dimly lit lab, their hands intertwined, Danielle felt a sense of peace wash over her. The future was still uncertain, the challenge of living in swapped bodies still daunting. But for the first time since the accident, she felt like maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotion and discovery for both Danielle and Ashley.
Their relationship, already complex due to their unique situation, took on new depths as they navigated the unfamiliar territory of romantic feelings. For Danielle, it was a journey of self-discovery unlike anything she had ever experienced. She found herself noticing things about Ashley that she had never paid attention to before. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the gentleness of her touch despite being in David's larger body, the depth of her compassion and understanding. One lazy Sunday morning, as they lay in bed together, Danielle traced the contours of Ashley's face. Her own face, really, but now so different with Ashley's expressions and mannerisms. "It's strange," she mused, her fingers ghosting over Ashley's cheek. "I used to look in the mirror and see this face every day, but now, when I look at you, it's like seeing it for the first time." Ashley caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I know what you mean. Sometimes I forget that we're in different bodies. It's like I see you, the real you, regardless of what you look like on the outside." Danielle felt her heart swell with emotion. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm almost grateful for the accident. If it hadn't happened, we might never have discovered this connection between us." Ashley nodded, pulling Danielle closer. "It's funny how life works out sometimes. We set out to swap bodies for science, and ended up swapping hearts instead." As they lay there, wrapped in each other's arms, Danielle marveled at how natural it felt. The initial awkwardness of their new bodies had faded, replaced by a comfort and intimacy that transcended physical form. But their relationship wasn't without its challenges. The outside world still saw them as they appeared. Danielle in Ashley's body, Ashley in David's. Navigating social situations became a delicate balance of maintaining their pre-swap personas while also being true to their evolving feelings for each other. One evening, they decided to go out for dinner, their first real date since acknowledging their feelings. Danielle spent far too long getting ready, fussing with her hair and makeup, trying to perfect her appearance in a way she had never cared about as David. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, Ashley's eyes widened in appreciation. "You look beautiful," she said softly, taking in the sight of Danielle in a sleek black dress. Danielle felt a blush creep up her cheeks, still not entirely used to such compliments. "Thank you," she murmured, smoothing down the front of her dress nervously. "You look pretty handsome yourself." Ashley grinned, adjusting the collar of her shirt. She had opted for a classic look, dark slacks and a crisp white button-up. "Shall we?" she asked, offering her arm. As they walked into the restaurant, Danielle couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety. This was their first time out as a couple, and she wasn't sure how to act. Should she take the lead, as she would have as David, or should she follow Ashley's cues? They were seated at a cozy table in the corner, and as they perused the menus, Danielle felt Ashley's foot brush against hers under the table. She looked up, meeting Ashley's warm gaze, and felt her nervousness start to melt away. The waiter approached, and Ashley smoothly ordered for both of them, remembering Danielle's preferences without having to ask. It was a small gesture, but it touched Danielle deeply. Even in a different body, Ashley knew her so well. As they ate, they fell into easy conversation, discussing everything from work to their favorite books. Danielle found herself laughing more than she had in weeks, reveling in the simple joy of Ashley's company. "You know," Ashley said, reaching across the table to take Danielle's hand. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm starting to think that maybe this swap wasn't the worst thing that could have happened to us." Danielle squeezed her hand, understanding the weight of those words.
I know what you mean. It's been challenging, and there are still days when I struggle with it. But it's also opened up possibilities I never would have imagined.
As they left the restaurant, hand in hand, Danielle felt a sense of contentment wash over her. The future was still uncertain. They hadn't given up on finding a way to reverse the swap. But for now, she was happy. Happy with who she was becoming, and happy with the relationship she and Ashley were building. The next few months saw both Danielle and Ashley settling into their new lives with increasing comfort. Danielle found herself embracing aspects of femininity that she had once dismissed, discovering a newfound appreciation for the art of self-expression through fashion and makeup. One afternoon, as she stood in front of the mirror, carefully applying eyeliner, she caught sight of Ashley watching her from the doorway.
"What?"
she asked, a small smile playing at her lips. Ashley shook her head, a look of wonder in her eyes. "It's just amazing to see how far you've come. Remember when you could barely put on mascara without poking yourself in the eye?" Danielle laughed, the sound light and carefree. "Oh, believe me, I remember. I think I've finally mastered the art of not stabbing myself with beauty products." As she finished her makeup, Ashley came up behind her, wrapping her arms around Danielle's waist. The height difference between them still took some getting used to, but Danielle found she liked the feeling of being enveloped in Ashley's embrace. "You're beautiful," Ashley murmured, pressing a kiss to the top of Danielle's head. "Inside and out." Danielle turned in Ashley's arms, reaching up to cup her face. "So are you," she said softly. "No matter what body you're in." They shared a tender kiss, and Danielle marveled at how natural it felt now. The initial strangeness of kissing her own body had faded, replaced by a deep appreciation for the person inside. As they broke apart, Ashley's expression turned thoughtful. "You know," she said, "I've been thinking, maybe it's time we start considering more permanent arrangements." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Ashley took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what she was about to say. "I mean, maybe we should start thinking about legally changing our names, making our new identities official." The suggestion hit Danielle like a ton of bricks. It was one thing to adapt to living in a different body, but to legally change their identities? That felt like a final admission that their situation was permanent. I don't know, Ashley," she said hesitantly. "That's a big step. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Ashley nodded, her expression serious. "I've been thinking about it a lot lately. We've been living like this for months now, and while I haven't given up hope that we might find a way to reverse the swap someday, I think we need to start accepting this as our reality, at least for now." Danielle considered Ashley's words carefully. She couldn't deny the logic behind them. They had been living as Danielle and Ashley, in David's body, for so long now that their old identities felt increasingly distant. "You're right," she said finally. It feels so final, like we're giving up on ever being our old selves again." Ashley pulled her close, resting her chin on top of Danielle's head. "I don't see it as giving up. I see it as moving forward. We're not the same people we were before the swap, Danielle. We've grown, changed, fallen in love. This is just acknowledging that growth." Danielle nodded, feeling a mix of emotions wash over her. Fear, excitement, sadness, hope, all swirling together in a complex tapestry of feelings. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's do it. Let's make it official." The process of legally changing their names and identities was long and complicated, involving countless forms, meetings with lawyers, and explanations to bewildered government officials. But as they navigated the bureaucratic maze together, Danielle found herself feeling more and more at peace with the decision. The day they received their new legal documents was a milestone. Danielle held her new driver's license in her hand, staring at the photo of Ashley's face. Her face now, next to the name Danielle Thompson. "It's real," she whispered, tracing her finger over the embossed letters. "It's really real." Ashley nodded, holding her own new ID. David Miller was now officially her legal name, matching the body she inhabited. As they stood there, holding the tangible proof of their new identities, Danielle felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She turned to Ashley, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being here with me through all of this, for loving me, no matter what body I'm in." Ashley pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Always," she murmured. "No matter what happens, we're in this together." As they embraced, Danielle felt a sense of peace settle over her. The journey had been long and challenging, filled with ups and downs, moments of despair and flashes of joy. But standing here, in the arms of the person she loved, she knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The body swap that had started as a scientific experiment had led them on a journey of self-discovery, love, and acceptance. And while their physical forms might not match their original selves, Danielle knew that who they were inside, their hearts, their minds, their souls, that was what truly mattered. As they left the government office, hand in hand, Danielle felt a sense of excitement for what the future might hold. They were Danielle and Ashley now, in body and in name, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. The sun was setting as they walked home, casting a warm glow over the city. Danielle looked up at Ashley, marveling at how the light caught her auburn hair, the same hair that had once been her own. In that moment, she felt a surge of love so strong it almost took her breath away. "I love you," she said simply, squeezing Ashley's hand. Ashley smiled down at her, her eyes filled with warmth. "I love you too," she replied, "more than I ever thought possible." As they continued their walk home, Danielle reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. From skeptical scientists to reluctant body swappers to a couple deeply in love, it was a path neither of them could have predicted. But as she felt the warmth of Ashley's hand in hers, saw the love shining in her eyes, Danielle knew that she wouldn't change a thing. Their accidental swap had led them to discover a love and connection that transcended physical form, and for that, she was eternally grateful. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities. The sun's final rays stretched across the horizon, casting a warm glow upon the city, as if blessing the start of this new chapter. Danielle and Ashley's footsteps echoed on the pavement, each stride a step towards the promise of their journey together. A warm summer breeze whispered through the streets, carrying whispered promises of endless possibilities. As they entered their cozy apartment, the one where they had shared countless memories, Danielle's hand shook a little as she pushed open the door. This place now represented a fresh start, a new beginning for both of them. Danielle turned, resting her head on Ashley's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, a comforting melody. "Let the journey begin," Danielle whispered, her voice unwavering. Ashley kissed her forehead,
confident in their decision to step into the unknown together.
Thanks for watching, my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.